My father. Sign your apartment over. It'll cover the loan. We'll return it. I asked, and the bank? Payments from my card? He, don't make me a criminal. I took the audio to a lawyer. I'm sitting in Lindsay Farrell's office staring at my phone. The screen glows blue, frozen on yesterday's date, October 23rd, 6:32 p.m. A recording of a conversation with my father. Lindsay presses the play button, and my father's voice comes out of the speaker, the same voice he used to read me bedtime stories with. Ami, you're a smart girl. This isn't forever. It's just a temporary measure. Lindsay listens intently, her face expressionless. When the recording ends, she puts the phone down and looks me straight in the eye. Do you understand that your father is trying to saddle you with a debt of $300,000? I nod. Although I don't really understand anything. How did I end up here? How did I end up sitting in a lawyer's office with a hidden recording of a conversation with my own father? My name is Amelia Collins. I'm 27 years old, and a week ago, I thought I knew my family. I work as a travel manager at Wanderlust Travel, a small agency on the outskirts of Portland, where we put together itineraries for tourists who want to see Oregon from more than just a bus window. It's a decent job with an average salary, but it's enough to pay the mortgage on my 3-bedroom apartment and occasionally treat myself to sushi on the weekends. 3 years ago, when I bought this apartment, my parents didn't even come to see it. My mom said she had a headache, and my dad said he was busy at the Grayson site. My older brother didn't even respond to my message. I signed the papers myself, my hands shaking, afraid I would do something wrong. Then I stood in the empty rooms, looked at the bare walls, and thought, this is it, adult life. Lonely, but mine. 6 months later, Dad bought his son a Ford F-150 for $38,000 in cash. Grayson didn't even say thank you, and he said the car was okay, even though he wanted a blue one, not a black one. Our family has always been like that, Dad. Dennis and Collins, 56 years old, owner of Collier & Sons Construction. He builds commercial properties and sometimes takes on private home renovations. Mom, Vivian, 54, housewife who believes that her husband is always right. Grayson, 32, officially the deputy head of the company, but in reality a man who shows up at the sites once a week and spends the rest of his time at the Lucky Strike bar playing poker. I've always been quiet. The one who doesn't cause trouble, the one who graduated from college with good grades, found a job, rented an apartment, and then bought her own. The one who was told at family dinners, Amy, pass the salad, and is forgotten when it comes to asking how I'm doing. Grayson is the star. He's the son Dad looks at with pride, even when Grayson comes home drunk at 4 a.m. The boy is relaxing. He works hard, Dad says, although Grayson doesn't work hard. He just has the Collins name and a smile that charmed people back in school. I remember when I was 19, I first told my parents that I wanted to volunteer in Costa Rica for the summer to help build a school. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. Me, don't be silly. You'd better get a normal job. And when Grayson decided at 23 to go to Mexico for a month to find himself, my dad gave him $2,000 for the trip and said, "Good for you, son. You need to see the world." I didn't go to Costa Rica. Instead, I got an internship at a travel agency and started saving money for my own place. The dream of an apartment became my way of escape. Not physical, but symbolic. A place where I would be the one to decide what to do. When I finally saved up for the down payment and took out a mortgage, my mom said, "Why are you buying an apartment? You can live with us until you get married." I didn't explain that I wasn't planning on getting married anytime soon, and that living with them was like confirming my place in the background every day. I just moved out. And for the first time in many years, I felt like I could breathe. Over the last 6 months, my dad started calling me often, not just to ask how I was doing. He asked about my job, my apartment, and whether I was planning to sell it. "Ami, how much is real estate in your area worth now?" "Amy, you're paying your mortgage regularly, right? No delays." Amy, family is the most important thing, remember. I felt that something was wrong, but I dismissed it. I thought maybe he just wants to be closer. Maybe he finally realized that he has not only a son, but also a daughter. Nah. I even felt some warmth from these calls. Finally, my dad was interested in me. Naive fool. And then 3 days ago, he called in the evening. His voice was serious, without his usual indifference. Amy, come tomorrow at 3. We have a serious conversation to have. I came. My parents' house looked the same as always. A neat lawn, a white fence, large windows with dark blue frames. Inside, it smelled like my mom's apple pie. All 3 of them were sitting at the table in the living room. Dad, Mom, and Grayson. Dad didn't waste any time. We're having problems with the business. The bank is demanding collateral. If we don't pay off the loan, we'll lose everything. Mom nodded, clutching a napkin in her hands. Grayson stared at his phone as if it didn't concern him. Some game was lit up on the screen. I didn't understand why they were telling me this. I don't have the money to help. I barely have enough for my own life. My mortgage takes up almost half my salary. Dad, I don't have that kind of money. He raised his hand to stop me. We don't need money, Amy. We need your apartment. I was stunned. My heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed everyone could hear it. Mom looked at me with a pleading look in her eyes. Grayson scrolled through his phone. But how will that help? I don't understand. Dad leaned forward, his eyes cold and focused. He looked like he did at business meetings, confident without a doubt. You'll sign a deed of gift to me. Temporarily, I'll take out a loan on your apartment, pay off the company's debts, and then we'll pay you back. It's easier than it seems. The notary is ready to meet. I sat there trying to understand what he had just said. Sign a deed of gift to him for the apartment that I bought myself, paid for over 3 years, and personally chose every nail in. But it's my apartment, Dad. I live there. Ami. My mother interrupted, her voice trembling. This is family. We help each other. Your father spent 30 years building this business. You don't want us to lose everything, do you? Grayson finally looked up. Don't be dramatic, Ami. Dad said it's temporary. They'll give it all back to you. His voice was indifferent, as if we were discussing where to order pizza. I looked at my brother and thought, he doesn't care. He never cared. Dad spoke again, more softly this time. Ami, I understand this is a difficult decision, but think about it. If we lose the company, what will happen to us? Your mom, me? We've put our whole lives into this. Nothing will go wrong, and as soon as we pay off the debt, everything will be returned to you, I promise. Mom sobbed. I saw her wipe her eyes with a napkin. I felt the weight of their expectations, their looks, their words pressing down on me. I need time to think, I finally said. Dad straightened up, his face cold again. Ami, we don't have time. The bank is waiting for an answer by the end of the week. It's a matter of days, not weeks. I stood up, my legs barely holding me. I can't just do it right away. This is serious. I need to think about it. Grayson rolled his eyes. Mom started crying again. Dad just looked at me, and in his gaze, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Coldness, calculation. Okay, he said, think about it, but don't take too long. This is family, Amy. I hope you remember that. I left the house, got in the car, and sat there for a long time staring at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. One question kept running through my head. What just happened, and why did I feel so uneasy? I drove home in complete silence. The radio was off, my phone was on the passenger seat, lit up with missed calls. Mom, Dad, Mom again. I didn't answer, I just gripped the steering wheel and tried not to think about what I had just heard. I drove home on autopilot. I opened the door to my apartment, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the sofa. I stared at the ceiling and felt something tighten inside me. They asked me to give up the only thing I had, the only thing that was truly mine. The phone rang again. This time it was Sienna. My friend, the only person I could trust. We met 5 years ago at Spanish classes. She wanted to go to Barcelona. I dreamed of Patagonia. Neither of us ever went, but our friendship remained. Hi, Amy. Long time no talk. How are you? I was silent for a few seconds. Then I started talking. Everything. About my father, about the debts, about the gift, about how my mother cried while Grayson stared at his phone. Sienna listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Amy, Sienna finally said, and her voice didn't have its usual lightness. Are you out of your mind? It's your only property. If you sign the deed, the apartment will be his. He can do whatever he wants with it. But he said it was temporary, that he'd give it all back. Amy, listen to me carefully. I'm an accountant. I've seen dozens of stories like this. When someone says temporary about property, it almost always means forever. Especially if that property is used as collateral for a loan. My throat felt dry. I knew Sienna was right, but part of me wanted to believe that my father wouldn't do anything bad to me, that he really just needed help. But what can I do? They say they'll lose everything, that the firm will go bankrupt. Why won't Grayson help? He's part of this family too, isn't he? Why are they reaching out to you? I didn't know how to answer. Sienna sighed. Amy, listen to me. Before you sign anything, talk to a lawyer. A real lawyer, not a family friend. Someone who will tell you the truth. She gave me the number of a friend of hers, Roger Harrison, who handled civil cases. I thanked her and put the phone down. The next morning, I called Roger. He saw me that same day in the afternoon in a small office on the 3rd floor of an old building. Roger was a short man in his 60s, wearing glasses and a shirt with rolled-up sleeves. I told him everything. He listened, taking notes in a yellow notebook. So your father wants you to give him the apartment and he'll take out a loan for it? Yes. He says it's temporary. Roger took off his glasses and rubbed his nose. Miss Collins, I'll be blunt. If you sign the deed of gift, the apartment will become his property. Legally, it will no longer be yours. If he takes out a loan for it and can't pay it back, the bank will take the apartment, and you'll be left with nothing but your own loan for the apartment. But he'll pay it back. He promised. Promises have no legal force. A deed of gift does. Do you understand the difference? I nodded, though inside I was trembling. What if I say no? Then you'll keep your apartment. But from what you've told me, your family won't take it well. I left Roger's office with a heavy weight on my chest. I couldn't concentrate on work all day. I was planning a route for a couple from Texas who wanted to see the waterfalls, but I kept thinking about the lawyer's words. A gift is legally binding. Promises are not. In the evening, my mother called. Her voice was trembling. Ami, sweetie, how are you? Have you thought about what we talked about? Mom, Ami, please, your father is very worried. He didn't sleep all night. You know his heart isn't very good. I squeezed the phone so hard that my fingers hurt. Mom, I just want to understand. Why me? Why not Grayson? Mom was silent for a moment. Well, Grayson. He works for the company, honey. It's hard to explain. But he has a pickup truck that costs more than $30,000. He can sell it. Ami, don't be like that. Grayson needs a car for work. And I need an apartment to live in. I heard my mother sob. Ami, I don't recognize you. You've always been a good girl. Why are you being so selfish now? I hung up the phone and sat staring at the wall. I was called selfish for not wanting to give up the only thing I had. That night, I couldn't sleep either. I lay in the dark and went over all the options in my head. If I sign, I could lose everything. If I don't sign, I'll be blamed for the breakdown of the family. In the morning, my father called. His voice was sharp and cold. Ami, tomorrow at 3 o'clock. The notary is waiting. The documents are ready. Will you come? Dad, I haven't... Ami, we don't have time for your doubts. Either you're part of this family or you're not. Make up your mind. He hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something inside me break. And then I realized if I go there tomorrow, I need proof. Evidence of what is really going on. I opened my phone settings and found the voice recorder. I checked if it was working. I recorded a few words and listened to them. The sound was clear. The next day at 3 o'clock, I was standing outside my parents' house. I had my phone in my pocket with the voice recorder turned on. I went inside. All three of them were sitting at the table. Dad looked tense. Mom looked tearful, and Grayson looked indifferent. There was a stack of documents in front of Dad. "Ami, finally, sit down." I sat down. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought they could hear it. "So," Dad began, "the documents are ready. You sign the deed of gift, I take out a loan for the apartment, and pay off the company's debts. In a year or two, when everything stabilizes, we'll give the apartment back to you." "Dad, why can't you take out a loan without my apartment? You have the company's commercial real estate." He frowned. "It's already been pledged. The bank won't give us any more for the same property." "Why can't Grayson help?" Grayson looked up from his phone. "I'm already helping. I work for the company." "You can sell your pickup truck." "Amy, that's not funny. I need a car. And I need an apartment." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! Amy, you're either with us or against us. This is a matter of loyalty." I took a deep breath. "What if the bank asks why the payments have been coming from my card for 3 years? How will you explain to them that the apartment is now yours?" Dad waved his hand. "Don't make me out to be a criminal, Amy. We'll work everything out with the lawyers. It's legal." "But how exactly?" "Amy, stop it. I've been building this business for 30 years. 30 years, and you're sitting here interrogating me like I'm some kind of crook." "You ungrateful, selfish brat," Mom cried louder. Grayson looked at his phone again. I stood up. "I need a little more time to think." Dad jumped up. "There's no time. You have 24 hours, Amy. 1 day. Otherwise, we'll lose everything. And it will be on your conscience. Do you want your mom and dad to end up on the street because of your stupid stubbornness?" I left without looking back. In the car, with trembling hands, I turned off the recorder. I listened to the recording. Everything had been recorded, every word. I went to see another lawyer, Lindsay Farrell. Sienna said she specialized in family disputes and property law. Lindsay saw me that same evening despite the late hour. Her office was small but cozy. Lindsay was a woman of about 45, dressed in a strict suit with an attentive gaze. I showed her the recording. She listened carefully without interrupting. When the recording ended, she put down the phone and looked at me. "It's a scheme, a classic debt transfer scheme. If you sign the deed, the apartment will legally become his, but you will still have the loan on it. He will take out the loan, not pay it, and the bank will take the apartment. You will lose everything forever." But he promised to pay it back. "Miss Collins, promises have no legal force. A deed of gift does. Once you sign it, that's it. There will be no way to get anything back." I sat there and felt the room spinning. "What should I do?" "Don't sign anything, under any circumstances." "But they say they'll lose everything." Lindsay smiled grimly. "Miss Collins, if they lose everything, that's their problem, not yours. You're not obligated to save their business at the cost of your own life when they're willing to sacrifice yours." I nodded, but inside I was trembling. Lindsay leaned forward. "And there's something else you need to know. Your father tried to take out a loan in your name a year ago. He used old documents that he probably had left over from some joint ventures or powers of attorney. The bank refused because of discrepancies in the data. I was stunned. "How do you know that?" Lindsay pulled a folder out of the drawer. "Because he used the same scheme with another person, a woman named Rachel Drake. She lost her house, and 6 months later she committed suicide. That kind of thing sticks with you." I felt the room grow cold. Lindsay looked at me seriously. "Miss Collins, your father is not a victim of circumstance. He's done this before. And if you sign, he'll do it again. The only question is, are you willing to be the next victim?" I left Lindsay's office at 9 o'clock in the evening. The air was cold and damp, a typical Portland November. I sat in my car and looked at my phone. 16 missed calls, Mom, Dad, Grayson, and 3 messages from Dad. Amy, time is running out. Do you realize what you're doing? The deadline is tomorrow at 3. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the first ring. Ami, finally. Have you made your decision? I took a deep breath. Yes, Dad. I'm not signing the deed. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then an explosion. What? Are you out of your mind? Dad, I can't. It's my only apartment. You've destroyed the family. Dad's voice was so loud that I moved the phone away from my ear. Because of you, we'll lose everything. The company, the house, everything I've built over 30 years. And it's on your conscience. Dad, you're no longer my daughter. Do you hear me? Don't call me anymore. Don't come here. You don't exist to me. He hung up. I sat there clutching the phone and felt something inside me break. I had just lost my father, although maybe I never had one. The phone rang again. It was my mother. Ami, my daughter, what have you done? Her voice was quiet, broken. Mom, I can't give up the apartment. I just can't. Ami, my heart can't take it. Are you trying to kill me? Your father hasn't slept all night. His blood pressure has shot up. He took 2 pills. Do you realize what you're doing? Mom, it's not my fault. I'm not responsible for the company's debts. But you can help. You can save us, and you refuse. You're selfish, Ami. I didn't raise you to be like this. She hung up too. I dropped the phone on my lap and just sat there. It was hard to breathe. My chest was burning. The phone vibrated. A message from Grayson. Well done, Ami. You've always thought only of yourself. I hope your apartment is worth destroying your family. Then another. When you lose everything, remember this moment. Remember how you could have helped but didn't want to, and how we won't help you in the same situation. I blocked his number, then my mom's, then my dad's. My hands were shaking so much that I could barely press the buttons. I went home, got under the covers, and just lay there. I didn't cry. I just lay there and stared at the ceiling. I felt empty. The next morning, I woke up to a phone call, an unfamiliar number. Hello? Ami, it's Aunt Joan. Joan is my mom's sister. We saw each other once a year on Thanksgiving. Hi, Auntie. Ami, your mom called me this morning. She was crying. She told me what was going on. Ami? How could you? I sat up in bed. Auntie, it's not as simple as it seems. Ami, this is your family. Your father worked his whole life to provide for you. And now, when he needs help, you turn your back on him. That's not right. Auntie, they're asking me to give them the apartment. I could lose everything. But your father promised to pay you back. Why don't you believe him? I didn't know what to say. Aunt Joan sighed. Ami, I'm very disappointed in you. I thought you were better than that. She hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling the noose tighten around me. I didn't answer the next call, but the messages kept coming from my cousin Lucas. Ami, I heard what happened. That's low. From my parents' neighbor, Mrs. Granger. Amelia, your mother is so upset. How could you do that? From a former school friend I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Ami, I'm shocked. I thought you were different. I turned off my phone. I just turned it off and put it in a drawer. I couldn't read those messages anymore. I couldn't hear everyone around me telling me I was bad. At work, I barely held on. I tried to focus on the roots, on the customers, on anything that wasn't my family. But my thoughts kept returning to my parents' house, to my dad's words, "You're not my daughter anymore." Sienna stopped by after work with Chinese food and a bottle of wine. Ami, you look terrible. Thanks for the support. I tried to smile, but it didn't work. We sat on the living room floor, eating noodles from paper boxes. Sienna talked about her job, about a crazy client who demanded that all the accounting be redone in one day. I listened and was grateful to her for not asking about my family. Sienna, you're an accountant. You work with different companies. Have you ever heard anything about my father's firm? Sienna put down her chopsticks. Ami, I didn't want to tell you until you asked, but yes, I have. Our office has a client who worked as a subcontractor for your father about 5 years ago. They say that Dennison was laundering money through fictitious deals at the time. Our client almost got hurt when it came to light. I felt my stomach tighten. And what happened? Dennison covered his tracks somehow, good lawyers, proper paperwork, but his reputation in construction circles is so-so. Few people want to work with him now. I sat there digesting this information. It turns out that the company's problems were not accidental. My father created them himself. In the evening, I turned on my phone. 8 more missed calls. But one number caught my attention. Unfamiliar, not from my contacts. And a message from him. Miss Collins, my name is Cole Drake. 2 years ago, your father convinced my sister Rachel to sign a deed to her house. He promised it was temporary, that he would give everything back. He took out a loan on it and disappeared. 6 months later, the bank took the house. Rachel couldn't take it and killed herself. And this isn't the first time your father has done this. If you want to know the truth, let's meet. My number is 503-287-4196. I reread the message 3 times. My hands were shaking. Rachel Drake. That's who Lindsay was talking about, the woman who lost her house and killed herself. And it happened just 2 years ago. I dialed Sienna's number. Amy, what's wrong? Sienna, I got a message from someone named Cole Drake. He says my father did the same thing to his sister 2 years ago. She lost her home and killed herself. Sienna was silent for a few seconds. Amy, this is serious? What does he want? To meet, to tell the truth. And you're going to go? I stared at the message on the screen. I don't know. It could be dangerous, but I want to know. I want to know what my father really did. Sienna sighed. If you go, let me know where and when. I'll be there. Just in case. The next day, I replied to Cole. We agreed to meet at Riverside Cafe, a public place in the city center. I arrived 15 minutes early, sat down at a table by the window, and waited. Cole showed up at 6 o'clock sharp, a man in his 50s, gray-haired, wearing a faded jacket and jeans. His face was tired, but his eyes were alert and attentive. He approached my table. Miss Collins, I nodded. He sat down across from me. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I know it's strange to receive a message like this from a stranger. You wrote about your sister. Cole nodded. His face hardened. Rachel. She was 3 years younger than me. Kind, trusting. Too trusting. He took an old photograph out of his pocket, a woman of about 35, smiling with curly hair. 2 years ago, Rachel found herself in a difficult situation. Divorce, her ex-husband's debts. All she had left was her house, a small one on the outskirts of town. She tried to survive, but she barely had enough money. Cole fell silent, staring out the window. Your father appeared as a savior. He met her through mutual acquaintances, learned about her problems, and offered to help. He said that if she signed a deed of gift for the house in his name, he could take out the maximum loan on it and give her some of the money to pay off her debts. And then, a year later, when everything stabilized, he would give the house back. I listened without breathing. It sounded exactly like what my father had offered me. Rachel believed him. She signed. She received $20,000 and paid off part of her debts. And your father took out a loan on the house for $250,000 and disappeared. He stopped answering calls and changed his number. And what happened to the house? Cole clenched his jaw. He never paid on the loan, not once. 6 months later, the bank began foreclosure proceedings. Rachel tried to fight it, hired a lawyer, but it was useless. Legally, the house belonged to your father, and he disappeared. The bank took the house. And Rachel? She couldn't take it. She lost the only roof over her head and realized she had been deceived. She fell into depression. I tried to help, but she no longer wanted to live. A year after she lost the house, she took pills. I found her at home, but it was too late. He wiped his eyes with his hand. I sat there, not knowing what to say. Miss Collins, I don't want the same thing to happen to you. When I heard through my contacts in the construction industry that Dennison was pressuring someone else in the family with the same scheme, I decided to find you. You need to know who you're dealing with. I looked at Rachel's photo, a smiling woman who had trusted the wrong person. Is he really like that? My father? Cole looked at me grimly. Your father is not a victim of circumstance, Miss Collins. He uses people. He seeks out those who are in difficult situations or who trust him because of family ties, and he sucks everything he can out of them. I felt a tightness in my chest. Cole leaned closer. There are other people. Others he's deceived in various ways. Not all of them ended as tragically as Rachel's, but people lost money, property, their reputation. I can give you their contact information if you want. So you know this isn't an isolated case. I nodded, unable to speak. Cole wrote 3 names and phone numbers on a napkin. These people have been through something similar. Talk to them. Find out the truth. I took the napkin and looked at the names. Talitha Bennett, Marco English, Juliana Kors. But be careful, Cole added. Dennison won't give up easily. When he realizes you won't sign, he'll start acting differently. He'll destroy your reputation, turn your family against you, use all his connections. He did the same thing to Rachel when she started asking questions. He told everyone she was crazy, that she was making things up. He won't stop. I looked at him and felt a chill growing inside me. What should I do? Gather evidence. Records, documents, testimonies, anything that can stop him. Because if you don't stop him now, he'll find his next victim, and it will all happen again. I drove home in complete silence. In the evening, I sat at the table and looked at the napkin with the names on it. 3 people. 3 lives that my father had destroyed in recent years. And how many more had there been in the 30 years that he had been building his business? My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Amelia, it's Mom. I'm writing from my neighbor's phone. Your father is in the hospital. Heart attack. The doctors say it's because of stress. It's because of you, Ami. If anything happens to him, it will be on your conscience. I stared at the message. My hands were shaking. Was it true? Was it just another way to get me to sign? After what I found out about Rachel, I didn't know what to believe anymore. And suddenly, I realized I no longer recognize my family. Or maybe I'm just seeing them for the first time as they really are. I didn't go to the hospital. I sat at home, staring at my mom's message, unable to bring myself to believe it. A heart attack due to stress because of me. But something inside me, maybe my survival instinct, or maybe just exhaustion from all the manipulation, whispered, "Don't go, it's a trap." Instead, I took the napkin with the names Cole had given me and dialed the first number. Talitha Bennett answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello." "Miss Bennett, my name is Amelia Collins. Cole Drake gave me your number." Silence. Then, "Are you Dennis Collins' daughter?" "Yes, and my father and I are not on good terms right now." "Then we really do have something to talk about." We met the next day at the same Riverside coffee shop. Talita was a woman of about 38, slim, wearing a business suit and a short haircut. She looked tired but composed. On her left hand was a wedding ring, on her wrist an inexpensive watch. Everything about her spoke of a person who was used to keeping herself under control. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," I began. Talita smiled without warmth. "Cole said your father tried to do the same thing to you that he did to Rachel. You didn't sign." "No." My lawyer advised me not to. A smart lawyer. Talita ordered coffee. "I worked as an accountant at your father's firm 4 years ago. I kept all the financial records. And here's what you need to know. Your father isn't just a con artist. He's a serial criminal." I felt my heart race. "What do you mean?" Talita took a folder out of her bag. It was old, worn, with yellowed pages inside. "When I worked for him, I noticed discrepancies. Money received from clients was not always reflected in the official reports. There were fictitious contracts, forged invoices. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe one of the previous accountants had kept the records incorrectly. But then I realized these weren't mistakes. It was a system. She opened the folder and showed me copies of the documents. I looked at the numbers, the lines, the stamps, and the signatures, not understanding half of what I was seeing. Look, here are the company's official reports for the year 2022. Talita pointed to one sheet, and here are copies of the real statements that I managed to make before I was fired. See the difference? I looked at the numbers. Officially, the company showed a loss of minus $183,000, but the real statements showed a profit of plus $249,000. He was siphoning off money, not just taking it out. He was building a parallel empire. Talita flipped through a few pages. Look, this apartment in downtown Portland on Columbia Street was purchased in May 2022. The cost was $320,000. It's registered to Vivian Jones. That's your mother's maiden name, right? I nodded, feeling a chill spread through my body. And this commercial property is a small warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was purchased in September of the same year for $190,000. It's registered under the name Greg Collins. Who is that? Your father's cousin. He died 5 years ago of a heart attack. Right, and the property is still in his name. Your father is building his fortune while everyone thinks he's on the verge of bankruptcy. Officially, the company is barely surviving with debts and problems with the banks. But in reality, he owns at least $1 million worth of real estate, maybe more. I found 3 properties, but there may be many more. I couldn't believe it. I looked at the documents and felt the world around me become unreal. But why? Why does he need all this? Talita put the folder down and looked at me intently. First, to avoid paying taxes. If the company is officially in the red, you don't pay income tax. Second, to avoid creditors. If someone goes to court and demands money, the company is officially bankrupt, so there's nothing to take. Third, a backup plan. If something goes wrong, your father always has real estate that can't be traced. He's not stupid, Miss Collins. He's just immoral. I sat there trying to digest the information. All these years, my father told me how hard it was for him, how the company was barely staying afloat, how he was putting all his energy into keeping it from going bankrupt. But in reality, he was methodically stealing money and building up a financial cushion for himself. Miss Bennett, what happened to you? Why did you quit? Talita grimaced as if in pain. I didn't quit. I was fired. When I started asking questions, when I asked for an explanation of some discrepancies, your father said I was making mistakes in the reports, that I was incompetent, that because of me, the company was having problems with the tax authorities. She took a sip of coffee. He fired me without severance pay. He said I should be grateful that he wasn't suing me for financial violations. I was in shock. I tried to defend myself, to explain that I wasn't the one who kept the books. Someone else did. But he had already spread the word throughout the construction industry that I had stolen money from the company, that I had forged documents. Talita clenched her cup so tightly that her fingers turned white. I couldn't find a job for a year. No one wanted to hire an accountant with such a reputation. I called dozens of job openings and went to interviews, and every time I mentioned that I worked at Collier & Sons, I saw a change in the interviewers' eyes. They knew, everyone knew that Dennis and Collins had told them about me. And what did you do? I moved to another city, Salem. I started over. I changed my resume, removed any mention of working for your father. I said I was freelancing that year. I found a job at a small home repair company. The salary is half of what it used to be, but at least I'm not starving. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something between anger and exhaustion. Miss Collins, your father destroyed my career because I saw too much, and he'll do the same to you if you try to get in his way. He'll stop at nothing." I sat there feeling something inside me collapse. My father, the man who raised me, took me to the park on Sundays, bought me the chocolate chip ice cream I loved. This man is a criminal who destroys the lives of others without hesitation. Miss Bennett, have you thought about going to the police? With these documents? Talita sighed. I thought about it. I even consulted with a lawyer, but I didn't have enough evidence. Most of the documents remained at the firm, on their servers, in their safes. And the copies I have, I didn't get them entirely legally. I copied them before I was fired, without official permission. My lawyer said that in court these documents could be deemed inadmissible evidence, and your father can afford very good lawyers. Unlike me. She looked at me intently. But if you gather more evidence, if you find other people he has deceived, if you put together the whole picture, then you can try. The police like cases where everything is clear and understandable, where there is not just one witness but several, where there is not just one document but a stack. Do you understand? I nodded. Talita allowed me to take photos of her documents. I photographed each page, trying to hold the phone steady so that the numbers would be clear. Good luck, Miss Collins, Talita said goodbye, and be careful. Your father is not someone you can be naive about. I went to the next person on the list, Marco English. We met at his workshop, a small building on the outskirts of town that smelled of wire, plastic, and machine oil. Marco turned out to be a man of about 45, strongly built with hands cracked from work. He was wearing overalls with the English Electric Services logo. "Come in," he said, leading me into a small office with certificates and photographs of projects hanging on the walls. We sat down at a worn table. Marco poured water from a cooler into paper cups. "Cole said you're Dennison's daughter and that you have problems with him. Do you want to know the truth about him?" "Yes." Marco nodded. 5 years ago, we did some work on your father's property, complete electrical work in an office building on Burnside Street. It was a large space, 3 stories. We worked on it for 2 months. The job was complicated, so we had to bring in extra people. Dennison was supposed to pay $42,000, according to the contract. Marco rubbed his face with his hand. He paid half after signing, $21,000. He said he would pay the rest after the facility was handed over. We delivered the work on time. Everything worked perfectly. I sent the bill. A week passed. Silence. 2 weeks. Silence. I started calling. He didn't answer the phone. I sent text messages. He ignored them. I went to his office. His secretary said he wasn't there. And what did you do? I hired a lawyer. I took him to court. I won the case 3 months later. The court ruled that Dennison had to pay me the rest of the money plus interest for the delay. It came to $50,000. Marco smiled grimly. But when I came to collect the money, it turned out that the company had gone bankrupt. Officially, it had no assets. The office had been vacated, the equipment sold, the accounts empty. There was nothing to collect. He showed me a folder with court documents. I saw the court decision, the writs of execution, the letters from the bailiffs. I lost not only the $21,000 he hadn't paid me, I lost another $10,000 on lawyers and court costs. I had to lay off 2 workers because I couldn't pay their salaries. I had to turn down new projects because I didn't have money for materials. I almost went bankrupt myself. Marco looked at me, and I saw deep fatigue in his eyes. A year later, I happened to see Dennison at the Riverside Grill restaurant. He was with his wife, your mother, I guess. They were celebrating something, drinking wine, laughing. He was wearing an expensive suit. She was wearing jewelry. Meanwhile, I was barely making ends meet to save money on studio rent. He closed the folder. Your father didn't just fail to pay me. He knew he wouldn't pay when he signed the contract. He used my work, my time, my people. and then threw us away like useless junk. The last on the list was Juliana Corse. We met at her interior design studio, a small space in the city center with sketches, fabric samples, and photos of completed projects hanging on the walls. Juliana was a woman in her 50s, elegant with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She treated me to tea and cookies. Cole said, "You wanted to know about Dennison," she began. "I worked with him on the design of several office spaces 3 years ago. He wanted to create a presentable look for his firm. I developed the design, selected the furniture, fabrics, and decor. The work took 4 months. Juliana put sugar in her tea and stirred it. The contract was for $38,000. He paid the first installment, $10,000. Then the second, another $10,000. But he never paid the last $18,000. He disappeared. He didn't answer his phone, and the office was closed. I tried to contact him through a lawyer, but the company was already in bankruptcy proceedings. I couldn't get anything back." She took a sip of tea. "I lost $30,000. The $18,000 he didn't pay, plus the $12,000 I spent on materials and labor. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is the feeling of helplessness. You realize that you've been deceived, that someone deliberately took advantage of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. The system is on his side. He knows how to play by the rules so that he remains untouchable." Juliana looked at me intently. "Miss Collins, I understand that he's your father. But you need to know he's a scumbag. He's a predator who's been scheming for years to use others. And he won't stop until someone stops him." I listened to their stories and felt something cold and hard growing inside me. Anger, determination, the realization that I couldn't just turn away and live my life while my father continued to destroy other people's lives. That evening, I met with Cole again. We sat in the same Riverside coffee shop. I showed him the photos of the documents from Toledo and told him about Marco and Juliana. "Is this enough to go to the police?" I asked. Cole looked at the folder I had placed on the table. "Maybe, but you have to understand, this will be a war. Dennison won't give up easily. He'll use all his connections, all his resources. He'll destroy your reputation, turn your family against you, tell everyone that you're crazy, that you're out to get him for something. He'll make you look guilty in the eyes of everyone who knows you. Are you ready for that?" I looked at the folder with the evidence, at the photo of Rachel that Cole had shown me earlier, at the copies of documents from Toledo, at the court papers from Marco. "I'm not afraid of him anymore," I said. And it was true. The fear that had lived in me my whole life, the fear of disappointing my father, the fear of not living up to expectations, the fear of being bad, was gone. Instead, there was a cold, hard certainty. Cole nodded. "Then there's one more person you should talk to, a lawyer who specializes in financial crimes, Nick Tyrion. He'll help you put together a case that the police won't dismiss, so that everything is legally sound and convincing." He wrote down his contact information on a napkin. I thanked him and drove home. It was late, almost 10 o'clock in the evening. The streets were empty, with only a few cars and occasional pedestrians under the streetlights. I went up to my floor and saw a figure by the door. Grayson. He was sitting on the floor with his back to the wall, hugging his knees. Unshaven, in a wrinkled shirt that was probably once white, but his eyes were clear. For the first time in many months, he looked completely sober. "Amy?" He stood up when I approached. He moved slowly, as if afraid of scaring me. I looked at him, not knowing what to feel. Anger for all the years of indifference. Pity for a brother who had ruined his life. Suspicion that my father had sent him here in another attempt to convince me. "Grayson, if Dad sent you to convince me to sign—" "No." He shook his head so decisively that his hair fell over his eyes. "I came on my own. Dad doesn't know I'm here. If he finds out, I'm done for too." He looked at me, and there was something in his gaze that I hadn't seen in years. "Amy, we need to talk. I know something you don't, about Dad, about what he's really planning. And it's worse than you think. I opened the door to my apartment. Grayson entered cautiously, as if afraid I would change my mind and push him back out. We sat down on the sofa, me on one end, him on the other. Between us was a distance that had accumulated over the years. "Talk," I said. Grayson lowered his head into his hands, then raised it again. His face was gray with fatigue. "Amy, my father didn't just want to take out a loan on your apartment. He prepared a whole package of documents. There are fictitious agreements where you supposedly act as a guarantor for the company's debts. There are forged signatures on contracts you've never seen. If you had signed the deed of gift, he would have used it as the basis for everything else." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "You would have ended up owing not $300,000, but $1 million, maybe more. All the company's debts, all the loans, all the unpaid bills to contractors. All of that would have been transferred to you, and he would have disappeared. With the money, with the real estate he bought under false names. You would have been left with debts you couldn't pay off for the rest of your life." I sat there, unable to believe what I was hearing. "How do you know?" Grayson rubbed his face. "I saw the documents, by chance. A week ago, my father called me into his office. He said he wanted to discuss the future of the company. I came in and he was on the phone with a lawyer. He was discussing something. He was nervous. He waved me over and told me to wait. I sat down and waited. There was an open folder on the table. I didn't want to peek, but I saw your name on the documents." He fell silent, staring at the floor. "When my father left the office for a moment, I quickly flipped through a few pages. There were guarantee agreements where you had supposedly signed as a guarantor for the company's loans. The dates were 2 or 3 years ago. But I know you never did that. You didn't even know about these loans." "Fake signatures?" "Yes, and very high-quality ones. I'm no expert, but they looked convincing. And under the folder was another document, a draft deed of gift for your apartment. It already had your address, a description of the apartment, everything. All that was missing was your signature." I felt a burning sensation in my chest. "And you didn't say anything?" Grayson looked up. There was shame in his eyes. "At first, I thought it was a mistake, that maybe my father was just preparing options but wasn't going to use them. I wanted to believe that he wouldn't do that to his own daughter. But when they started slinging mud at you so viciously, I was an idiot too at first, but not as much." Grayson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Amy, I'm no saint. I lost a lot of money gambling. I drank. I lived off my parents while you were out there making a life for yourself. I was selfish and a jerk, but this is too much. He's ready to destroy you, Amy, completely. Leave you with nothing and not even look back." I looked at my brother. For the first time in many years, I saw something human in him. Something that wasn't arrogance or indifference. "Why are you telling me this?" "Why now?" Grayson smiled bitterly. "Because you're still my sister, and I'm not such a bastard to let that happen. All Dad cares about is the company and the money he can squeeze out of it for himself, and only himself. He doesn't think about us, Ami. He never has. We're tools. And when a tool breaks or doesn't obey, it gets thrown away." He looked at me, and I saw fear in his eyes. "Who knows? Maybe he'll throw me and Mom away too, without pity. I wouldn't be surprised if he has nothing sacred to him except money." I sat there, digesting his words. My brother, who had never stood up for me, who had always been on my father's side, was now sitting in front of me wanting to help. "Grayson, those documents you saw, are they still in his office?" "I don't know, maybe. He keeps important papers in a safe, but sometimes he leaves them on his desk when he's working on them. Can you get them?" Grayson looked at me in surprise. "Do you want to go to the police?" "Yes. But I need evidence. I've already gathered testimony from people he's cheated. I have recordings, documents. But if you get those papers with the forged signatures, that will be the final proof." Grayson was silent for a few seconds, thinking. "If he finds out that I'm helping you, Amy, he'll destroy me too. He doesn't forgive betrayal." "I know, that's why I'm asking. Are you sure you want to do this?" Grayson smiled, tiredly but honestly. "Ami, for the first time in many years, I'm doing something right. I want to try to feel like a human being, not a piece of trash who lives off others and watches his father ruin lives." The next day, we met again. Grayson brought a folder, thin but heavy with the significance of what was inside. Documents with forged signatures, drafts of deeds, correspondence with lawyers. "How did you get them?" "My father went to a meeting with the bank. I knew the code to the safe. I took everything that seemed important." I looked through the documents. My name was on contracts I had never signed. My signature forged so skillfully that I myself could hardly tell it apart from the real one. That same day, we went to the police, the station on Burnside Street, a 3-story building with gray walls. We asked to speak to the detective who handles financial crimes. We were received by Detective Curtis Warren, a man in his 50s with attentive eyes and a tired face. We sat in a small interrogation room and laid out all the evidence on the table. A recording of a conversation with my father where he demanded that I sign the deed of gift. Photographs of documents from Toledo showing double accounting. Court papers from Marco showing that my father had not paid for the work. Juliana's testimony, the story of Rachel Drake as told by Cole. And finally, the documents with forged signatures that Grayson had brought. Detective Warren looked at everything carefully, took notes, and asked questions. "Miss Collins, do you understand that by opening a case against your father, you may face serious pressure? Your family will try to stop you." "I understand, but I can't stay silent while he continues to ruin other people's lives, and mine." The detective nodded. "Okay, we'll start the investigation. It will take time, maybe a few months, but what you've brought in looks serious. If even half of it is confirmed, your father will be in big trouble." We left the station at dusk. Grayson kept his hands in his pockets and looked tense. "What now?" he asked. "Now we wait and prepare for my father to find out." He found out sooner than I thought. The next morning, my mother called me. Her voice was hysterical. "Amelia, what have you done?" "The police came to our house. They took documents, computers, everything. You destroyed our family. How could you?" I stood by the window of my apartment looking down at the street below. "Mom, I saved myself and Grayson. Dad destroyed our family himself, many years ago. You don't understand what you're doing. Your father worked his whole life for us, and you accuse him of—" "He's a criminal, Mom. He stole money, cheated people, forged documents. He wanted to transfer $1 million in debt to me. Did you know that?" Mom fell silent. He said it was temporary, that he would pay it all back. Like he paid Rachel Drake back her house? She killed herself, Mom, because Dad cheated her, and you can't pay back the dead, Mom." Mom started crying. "I didn't know. I didn't think. Amy, he's your father. He was my father. Now he's just a man who tried to destroy my life." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, but inside I felt clear-headed. I did the right thing. My father was arrested a week later. The official charges: fraud, forgery, tax evasion. Bail was set at $100,000. He was released on bail, but the case was still open. Collier & Sons Construction officially declared bankruptcy. All assets went to pay off debts. The house where my parents lived also went under the hammer, and it turned out that it was also mortgaged. My mother moved in with her sister Joan in Spokane, Washington. She called me once, begging me to come and explain why I did it. I didn't go. There was nothing to explain. Grayson did something I didn't expect. He decided to go to gambling rehab, on his own. No pressure, no coercion, Amy, I realize that if I don't change my life now, I never will, he said when we last met before he left for the center in Eugene. My father showed me what I could become if I continued down this path. I don't want to be like that. He hugged me, awkwardly but sincerely. It was the first hug in many years. My father's trial lasted 5 months. I didn't attend the hearings. I read the news reports and received updates from Detective Warren. In the end, my father was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Grayson, as the only son, received the rights to the remaining assets, the real estate properties that his father had purchased under false names. It turned out there were 5 of them. Their total value was about $1,200,000. Grayson sold 4 and kept 1, a small office in downtown Portland. He said he wanted to try to start his own business. A legal, honest construction company, but different. No scams, no schemes. I don't know if it will work, he told me on the phone, but I want to try. After all, I didn't drink away all my knowledge. And I couldn't live in Portland anymore. The city reminded me of my father, my family, everything that had happened. I needed a clean slate. I moved to Astoria, a small town on the coast where the ocean meets the Columbia River. I found a job with a tour company called Coastal Wanderers, leading groups on excursions to the lighthouse and the sea lions, telling stories about ships that had sunk off the coast. I rented a small house on the outskirts of town, 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a living room with a large window overlooking the ocean. I kept my apartment in Portland. I rented it out, and the money went toward paying off the mortgage. Life in Astoria was slow and peaceful. I woke up to the sound of the waves and had breakfast on the terrace, watching the fishing boats. I worked with tourists who came to see the ocean and forget their problems. 3 months after moving, I met Calvin. He was a fisherman, the owner of a small yacht on which he took tourists on sea trips. He was tall, with tanned skin and hands rough from working with ropes and nets. He was 34 and had lived in Astoria his whole life. We met at the pier when I brought a group of tourists on a sea excursion. He smiled, shook my hand, and helped me onto the yacht. "This is the first time I've seen you here," he said. "Are you new?" "I moved here 3 months ago." "From the big city?" "From Portland." He nodded without asking any more questions. I liked that. He didn't pry, didn't interrogate, didn't try to find out more than I wanted to tell him. We started seeing each other casually. At the pier, at a coffee shop, at the store. Then he asked me out to dinner. We sat in a small seafood restaurant, ate shrimp, and talked about the ocean, about fish, about how important it is to live slowly. Calvin was simple, honest. He didn't scheme, manipulate, or use people. He just was. And that was the best I could find after everything that had happened. We took our time. I wasn't ready to trust quickly. But slowly, step by step, I felt the ice inside me melt. Grayson called me 6 months after I moved. "Ami, I'm out of rehab. 3 months without gambling. It's hard, but I'm hanging in there. I'm proud of you." "Thanks. Listen, I started a small business. So far, it's just me and 2 workers. We renovate apartments. Honestly, no tricks. It's hard. There's not much money, but I feel like a human being." We talked rarely, but honestly. No lies, no embellishments, just a brother and sister trying to start their lives over. Mom called sometimes. I didn't always answer the phone. When I did, she cried and told me how hard her life was, how ashamed she felt in front of her neighbors. I listened, but I didn't feel guilty. She made her choice when she supported Dad all those years. One evening, I stood on the ocean shore and watched the sunset. The sky was ablaze with orange and pink. The waves were crashing against the rocks, and the seagulls were screaming above the water. I am no longer the girl who signs documents out of fear of upsetting others. I am no longer the one who sacrifices her life for those who are not worth sacrificing for. Now I only sign my own life, and it is finally mine.